inside Mario Buatta's extraordinary Manhattan apartment. Mario Buatta's living room measured only 20 feet square, yet he managed to fit 4 separate seating areas inside it. The walls glowed in 3 shades of lime green. Books rose in stacks beside chairs. Blue and white porcelain filled shelves and brackets. Antique dog portraits hung from wide blue ribbons, some tied into bows, large enough for John Fowler to compare them to Minnie Mouse ears. In the adjoining room, a red japanned Queen Anne secretary appeared to buckle beneath ceramic cabbages, tulips, and other botanical forms. Directoire chairs, once owned by fashion designer Norman Norell, were surrounded by more books. A Chippendale-style settee held hand-painted pillows purchased from Pamela Harriman's estate. When Mario Buatta's possessions were finally offered at auction, 922 lots required 22 hours of bidding and brought in $7.6 million. The scale was astonishing, though the apartment itself was more than a display of abundance. It revealed how one of America's most famous decorators lived when no client was there to approve the fabric, question the color, or ask him to remove another porcelain dog. This was Mario Buatta at full strength. Known as the Prince of Chintz, he created richly layered interiors for clients, including Henry Ford II, Barbara Walters, Malcolm Forbes, Billy Joel, Mariah Carey, and members of the Newhouse family. His own apartment at 120 East 81st Street in Manhattan offered the clearest portrait of the man behind those celebrated rooms. Every surface held evidence of a discovery. Every chair seemed connected to an earlier owner. Even the dust received a defense. And the entire story began with a $12 desk. Mario Buatta was born on October 20th, 1935, and grew up in West Brighton on Staten Island. His father, Felix Buatta, was a violinist and band leader who performed professionally under the name Phil Burton. Mario's interest in antiques appeared unusually early. At 11 years old, he found an antique lap desk priced at $12. His father disliked secondhand furniture and initially resisted the purchase, though Mario eventually persuaded him to bring it home. Years later, that same desk was valued at more than $4,000. The increased value pleased him, yet the real significance came from the obsession it began. Buatta remembered where he discovered nearly everything he owned, what he paid, and the circumstances surrounding the purchase. A chair recalled an auction. A vase brought back an antiques shop. A fabric preserved the memory of an earlier apartment. By adulthood, collecting had become inseparable from the way he understood interiors. Buatta studied architecture at Cooper Union, though the technical side of building never held his attention for long. He cared about the feeling of a room. He wanted to know how painted walls changed after sunset, why one furniture arrangement encouraged conversation, and how a recently decorated apartment could seem as though generations had already lived there. His most important education came through the English country house tradition. In 1963, Buatta met John Fowler of Colfax and Fowler. Fowler and his business partner, Nancy Lancaster, had shaped one of the 20th century's most influential approaches to decorating. Their rooms combined fine antiques, faded fabrics, painted furniture, generous seating, books, flowers, family objects, and a sense of history built through years of use. Nancy Lancaster's famous yellow drawing room made a powerful impression on Buatta. So did her country house, Hazley Court, and John Fowler's hunting lodge. He returned to New York with those interiors fixed in his imagination. Buatta translated their influence into a brighter, more theatrical American style. He used floral chintz, glazed walls, painted floors, bows, tassels, carved furniture, patterned carpets, decorative objects, and lighting designed to make rooms glow in the evening. His work became instantly recognizable. The nickname Prince of Chintz followed him for decades, though it captured only part of his ability. Behind the flowers and fringe was a serious understanding of scale, architecture, furniture placement, and color. His apartment showed all of those skills without the editing required in a client's home. By the time Architectural Digest photographed it in 1997, Buatta had been living there for more than 20 years. The rooms had developed through continuous collecting, rearranging, and reusing things he had carried from earlier addresses. Before we continue, thank you for joining me here on Cultured Elegance. If you enjoy discovering the private homes, collections, and fascinating lives of history's greatest tastemakers, I would love to have you subscribe. The entrance hall also served as the dining room. Warm golden walls formed a background for an extensive collection of blue and white ceramics dating from the 18th, 19th, and early 20th centuries. Plates climbed the walls, covered jars occupied shelves and carved brackets. Vases stood on tables and consoles. Buatta arranged several pieces around an Italian painting dating to around 1860. The room was full, yet its geometry kept the display coherent. Pairs of vessels framed paintings. Circular plates broke up broad areas of wall. Tall jars carried the eye toward the ceiling. The blue decoration became sharper against the gold. Even the dining table related to the architecture. A semi-octagonal end to the room was echoed in the table's shape. Above it hung a chandelier that had once belonged to Nancy Lancaster at Hazley Court. For Buatta, its importance extended beyond craftsmanship or provenance. It brought a physical piece of one of his greatest influences into his New York apartment. He burned real candles in the chandelier and allowed the wax to fall onto a French ceramic foot, warmer positioned below. Many collectors would have protected both objects. Buatta preferred signs of life. He admired cracked leather, worn upholstery, faded textiles, repaired ceramics, and furniture that carried marks from earlier owners. He once joked that many of his possessions were cracked because he had a few things wrong with him as well. Dust inspired another of his famous remarks. When asked how he handled the dust gathering across so many objects, he described it as a protective coating for fine furniture. The apartment's most celebrated room was the living room. At approximately 20 feet by 20 feet, it was not enormous. Buatta still created 4 distinct areas for conversation. Chairs faced one another. Small tables stood within reach. Lamps formed separate pools of light. Guests could sit near the fireplace, beside the bookcases, around a central table, or within a smaller group across the room. He once advised clients to host a party and watch where people moved the chairs. Those spontaneous arrangements often revealed how the room should have been furnished from the beginning. That suggestion explains why Buatta's rooms felt comfortable despite their density. He planned around human behavior. The walls were glazed in 3 shades of lime green, creating a surface that changed throughout the day. The paint appeared brighter in direct light and deeper in the evening. The floorboards were painted to imitate sisal, giving the room the appearance of a woven floor covering, while leaving the wood visible beneath the painted effect. At the windows hung a Lee Joffa floral fabric that Buatta had carried through 7 apartments since 1962. By the time the room was photographed in 1997, the Chintz had already followed him for 35 years. He believed floral fabric softened grand furniture and made formal pieces easier to live with. In his apartment, a gilded mirror could hang above a comfortable sofa. An important antique could share a table with a humorous ceramic vegetable. Valuable porcelain appeared beside inexpensive discoveries chosen for color, shape, or charm. Above the marble mantel hung an elaborate gilt Italian mirror, decorated with dogs along its crest. The mirror introduced the apartment's most personal collection. Buatta owned dozens of antique dog portraits, especially paintings of King Charles Spaniels. Several hung from broad blue silk ribbons tied into enormous bows. John Fowler reportedly teased him about the scale of those bows, comparing them to Minnie Mouse ears. Mario gave the dogs identities. 2 became his grandparents, A painting containing a Labrador and a Norwich Terrier represented Mario and his brother. Mario chose the Labrador. He referred to the collection as his ancestral dogs. Curiously, Buatta never owned a dog himself. He said he could talk to the painted animals, and they would never answer back. Their presence brought him genuine happiness, and they helped give the apartment a family history of its own. Visitors sometimes asked whether his antiques had been inherited. Buatta would explain that they were family pieces, although they had belonged to other people's families. It was a witty answer and an accurate description of what he had created. Through dealers, estate sales, auctions, and antiques shops, he assembled the furnishings of an imaginary old household. Over time, those objects acquired real personal history. The curtains followed him from one home to another. The dogs became familiar faces. Chairs and paintings accumulated memories connected to friends, clients, and earlier owners. The room beyond the living room contained one of the apartment's most extraordinary displays. A red japanned Queen Anne secretary stood beneath a collection of botanical majolica. Ceramic cabbages, tulips, flowers, and leaves covered its upper surfaces. The cabinet seemed to lean beneath the weight. Nearby stood directoire chairs, once owned by Norman Norell, one of the leading American fashion designers of the 20th century. Books crowded around them in unstable towers. A Chippendale-style settee held pillows hand-painted by George Oakes. Buatta had purchased them at the auction of Pamela Harriman's estate, where they became his largest acquisition. These objects gave the apartment a remarkable network of associations. Nancy Lancaster entered through the chandelier. Norman Norell appeared through the chairs. Pamela Harriman was represented by the pillows. Buatta absorbed each piece into his own surroundings without erasing its earlier life. His passion for collecting eventually exceeded the apartment's capacity. Designer Jane Churchill later recalled filming inside the home and encountering packing cases of books that reportedly reached waist height in the bedroom. Moving through the room required careful navigation. Books appeared everywhere. They filled shelves, covered tables, stood beside chairs, and gathered on the floor. Some were used as platforms for other objects. Others remained within reach because Buatta was still reading or consulting them. This apparent disorder concealed his technical precision. Blue reappeared in ribbons, porcelain, fabric, and painted details. Floral patterns changed scale across curtains, carpets, pillows, and artworks. Dark furniture stood clearly against luminous walls. Lamps divided crowded spaces into smaller, more intimate areas. Each collection had its own visual territory. The dogs dominated sections of the living room. Botanical ceramics formed a permanent garden around the secretary. Blue and white porcelain gave structure to the dining room. Books gathered near the places where they were actually used. Buatta knew how much pattern, furniture, and color a room could carry before losing its shape. His interiors were also designed for evening. Lamps sat close to chairs. Shades softened the light. Gilded surfaces reflected a warm glow. Glazed walls gained depth after sunset. The apartment may have been photographed during the day, though its real atmosphere emerged after dark. Buatta's work influenced generations of American decorators because it combined historical knowledge with a sense of humor. He could appreciate a fine Regency console and still become excited by a ceramic cabbage. He understood distinguished provenance, yet prestige never became the only reason to buy something. The thrill came from discovery. He searched auctions, antique shops, estate sales, and dealers with tremendous energy. He wanted to arrive early, recognize something overlooked by other buyers, and bring it home. A small decorative object could excite him as much as an important piece of furniture. Once it entered the apartment, its story joined the rest. Mario Buatta died on October 15, 2018, 5 days before his 83rd birthday. Only then did the full scale of his collection become apparent. His possessions filled the Manhattan apartment, the historic William Mason house he owned in Thompson, Connecticut, and additional storage spaces. In January 2020, Sotheby's offered 922 lots in a sale titled Mario Buatta, Prince of Interiors. Many lots contained several objects, meaning the true number of individual pieces was far higher. Sotheby's recreated the atmosphere of his green living room inside its New York galleries. Photographic panels, architectural elements, furniture, paintings, porcelain, and textiles allowed visitors to experience part of the apartment after it had been dismantled. More than 4,000 people visited the exhibition. The auction continued for 22 hours across 2 days and brought in $7.6 million, more than 2.5 times its high estimate. 99% of the lots sold. A 174-piece bucciolati, silver and bamboo flatware service had been estimated at between $5,000 and $7,000. After 28 bidders competed for it, the service reached $93,750. Even the Sotheby's auction could not empty the estate. Further sales offered approximately 1,400 additional objects, including furniture, porcelain, botanical prints, dog paintings, and decorative curiosities. The things Buatta had gathered from other homes were dispersed once again. His Manhattan apartment no longer exists as a complete interior, though the photographs preserve a home formed across more than 40 years. The Chintz had followed him through 7 apartments. The Hazley Court chandelier carried the memory of Nancy Lancaster. Norman Norell's chairs and Pamela Harriman's pillows retain the histories of their former owners. The painted dogs became his ancestors, and a $12 desk purchased by an 11-year-old boy began a collection so vast that its final Sotheby's auction lasted 22 hours. Mario Buatta believed a home should continue developing throughout its owner's life. By the end of his own, the apartment had become something he could never have designed for another client. It had become Mario Buatta.
Thank you everyone so much for watching Cultured Elegance. If you'd love to support the channel, you can become a channel member today by clicking Join at the bottom of the screen. Thank you everyone so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.